All right, Thomas, tell me a story about you having seen the movie The Monster Squad for the first time.
Well, I really can't remember exactly when it was, but I remember that it had to have been on HBO a million times in 88, 89, because that's right about, I think I was about 8 years old. I was born in 81, so I'm an elder millennial. Uh, my mom used to, I know we had HBO like all our lives, but I remember my mom recorded it on VHS. So she stole the movie off of HBO basically and put it on VHS with these three other movies that had nothing to do with Monster Squad. And I watched that tape a lot. Um, but what's funny is like she started it late, so the opening crawl of this movie was unknown to me until I saw it many years ago. I never even knew about that whole thing. It just, for me, it just started with the statue of the cemetery angel and the title Monster Squad. About any of that stuff before we'll talk about. But like, I think this movie may have been my introduction to the Universal monsters because I do not remember ever having seen Dracula or the original Frankenstein. I mean, I think years ago I think years later, maybe in like 90 on AMC, I watched Son of Frankenstein with my dad. I vividly remember that. So that's to me, that was like my Frankenstein for all the Son of Frankenstein. But this movie, I remember I must have been obsessed with it because I was like a stickler for the detail. Because like after that, I was always dressing up for Halloween as either Dracula or Wolfman or Mummy. I never tried to do Creature from the Black Lagoon, although Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite of all the monsters. But I remember like for one Halloween, it must have been like 89. I made mom create me like a custom Dracula outfit. Like the cape had to be what I thought was screen accurate to the movie, which was I thought for years that this Dracula in this movie had a white inlay in his collar with a red cape under, only because in the beginning when he's in the plane and it's all red light, the red in his cape reflects like it makes his inside of his look like it's white. And I thought that was the way it was supposed to be as a 9-year-old kid. So I insisted to my mom, who knew I was wrong but did it anyway. And I have those pictures of little me with my little, made up widow's peak, and that white collared Dracula cape. And years later, I tried to be. And then interesting side note to that, my mom, God bless her, when I was trying to be a Wolfman one year, um, my mom tried to. I hope she doesn't hear this because she's probably going to hate me for saying this, but she tried to glue wolf fur to my body. In addition to the wolf mask that I had, she tried to glue it to my body, and she had this idea that if she just put the hot glue on the fur patch and let it cool just enough, it would be sticky but not burn me. It was sticky, but it did burn me. And I still have, you people at home can't see, but I still have these two little nodges, these two little scars
Uh,
on my hand from those chemical burns that my mother inflicted on me from one Halloween because I wanted to be Wolfman so bad.
and with that, I would like to welcome everyone to Conversations in Horror. My name is Kevin L. Powers, and I am the host of the show. But my special guest tonight is Thomas Tinnerello, and we have been talking about the amazing film, The Monster Squad. So, Thomas, tell us all a little bit about yourself before we get even more in depth with the film and you dressing up as all the Universal monsters.
Oh man! So basically, I'm a screenwriter, novelist, podcaster, aspiring director, movie extra. You may or may not have seen me in such shows as Cobra Kai or Stranger Things. Um, I was man over Ralph Macchio's left shoulder in Cobra Kai season one during the tournament fighting scene. Then, so I've moved to Atlanta like maybe about 8 years, 9 years ago. and I've been trying to get a career in film ever since. But lately, like I said, I've become more of a novelist, writing a Christmas horror slasher novel right now. I tried to do the whole NaNoWriMo thing this month. I thought I'm going to write a novel the month of November, but I don't think it's going to happen for me unless like I suddenly get a bunch of free time from my other job, because I'm only about 4 chapters in, and we are halfway through November. It has flown by way too fast.
I would like to add to that while you're talking about that, something that helped me with my novel actually is the 3-day novel competition. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I didn't do it this year because I was too busy on Labor Day weekend, but normally I do it every Labor Day weekend. And what it is it forces you to try and write a novel in 3 days, which means that you have to do nothing other than write your novel over the course of the Labor Day weekend and then edit it and then turn it in by Monday. Now, it seems impossible, but they do not expect you to have like a Stephen King 500-page novel in 3 days. What they expect you to have is some type of novella, a long form novella. And whoever writes the best novella for that year gets published, and you get all that little accolades to that. I've only actually finished my novel once out of the 4 times I've tried, but I've tried 4 times. It's extremely fun, and if you have the time to just dedicate that entire weekend to nothing but writing, and it gets you immersed in your story, and it's a phenomenal thing that I always tell any writer that if you have the chance to do it, go ahead and do it. It's once a year, Labor Day weekend. It's always Labor Day weekend. They never change.
I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of the 8-Hour Film Festival. I think I did that twice when I was a kid. And that's and oddly enough, that the novel thing that seems harder than making a film in 48 hours.
I think when I did complete my book was just at 102 pages, which is the fastest I've ever written in my entire life. But I was cheating since I did have pictures in my book. But my other novel, which I did not finish, I got halfway through, was about 80 pages long. I got halfway through it because it's an adaptation of a screenplay I was writing, and I got through half the screenplay over the weekend. So I just need to do that again to finish up the whole fucking novel, and I'll be done with the novel. But enough about talking about us writing. We're both great writers. We've been in the Southern Shorts Southern Screenwriters Guild. I'm sorry, I'm getting it screwed up. It's been a long time. But we're both screenwriters. We're both writers. But we're here to talk about the Monster Squad movie. And if you want to talk about the writing, we can talk about that.
We're gonna be all over the place movie because I got notes. Before we get into that, I'd like to know your experience. When did you see this movie first, Kevin?
So I saw it. I saw the trailer when I was a kid. When it first came out, I saw the trailer for the movie. I was dying to see this movie. Now I did not grow up with any of the Universal monsters. I didn't watch those until I was much older. Actually, I didn't watch any Universal horror movie until I was actually in college. At which point, I actually had to study them in college. That was part of what I studied in college, which was horror films. So I wasn't familiar with them at all. But it was a monster movie. And I loved monster movies as a kid. I was a monster kid. I loved monster movies. And this movie had kids as the main protagonist, and it had monsters, and I fucking loved monsters. I was dying to see this movie. I did not, unfortunately, get to see it at the theater. Wish I had. But I did force my father to rent it the weekend it came out on VHS. I did do that, and it became one of my mainstay films. My brother, I don't think, ever understood my love of this movie at all. My brother's older than me, and there are certain movies of mine that I don't think he ever really understood why the heck I liked them so much, because I had seen this movie and another movie that he really never understood why I liked, which was Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. These movies I would watch a billion times, and my brother would look at me and like, what the is wrong with you, Kevin? So I was a huge fan of these type of weird 80s movies. And Monster Squad, which didn't do well at the box office, was one of my all-time favorites. I thought the kids were cool. I thought the monsters were cool. I thought the whole movie was cool. It was one of those films that, as a kid growing up, I watched it a billion times, and I still
And
watch.
what's funny too is like if you rented it on VHS, apparently the version, as I was doing my research for this, the version that you saw is a little different than the one that I saw today on streaming and the one that I have on DVD. Because apparently there was some rights issues with the Creature from the Black Lagoon. So the version that's on VHS has different lyrics for the epic song that happens at the end. Instead of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, it's the creature that's swimming in the pool. But for the version that's on streaming right now, that's on Paramount Plus, it says Creature from the Black Lagoon. So,
Interesting.
yeah, a little different. It's a little different, but yeah, most of the time, because think of it is like I don't think this was a Universal movie, but because most of these creatures are public domain, you could do whatever you want as long as they don't look exactly like the Universal monsters. And that was so the getting ahead of ourselves here, but all the creatures were designed by Stan Winston.
Yep.
The guy who created the Terminator, the Queen Alien, the Predator. That guy, yeah. And apparently the Wolfman's face is modeled after his face.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I always thought the Wolfman's face looked kind of weird. Now I know why.
What I will tell you is I do know a little bit about the makeup because I do remember reading about this. So I'm a monster kid at heart. I remember reading about that in Fangoria magazine back in the day. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. But I used to read that magazine religiously as a kid. I know my parents would look at me like I was freaking nuts. What are you reading here with all these monsters and this horror stuff? I was like, I paid it with my own money, Ma. And he's like, okay, that's fine. As long as I was spending my own money for it, she didn't care. But I do remember that because Stan Winston, even when I was a kid, Stan Winston's name always came out because he did so many great monsters, and Fangoria always highlighted them. They have a new version of Fangoria now, which is I haven't. Oddly enough, I have never read an issue of the new version of Fangoria. I'm gonna have to fix that. Uh, but I don't have time as much to read the magazines like I used to when I was a kid, when all I ever did was read magazines about monsters. So,
yeah, that's yeah. I hear advertisements for Fangoria a lot because a lot of the podcasts I listen to are sponsored by Fangoria or like feature people who are on it. So yeah, they're doing the Lord's work. They're still printing. They're not just digital only. They print the magazine on paper.
Yep. But the new version is printed. If you want to read any of the old issues, they are all digital, which is great. I have gone back and read some of the older ones I didn't read as a kid. I know. I still. I could put them on my tablet now and just read them on the tablet.
So this movie, I didn't realize way later. So written and directed by Fred Decker.
Yeah.
Also did another great zombie movie of the 80s called Night of the Creeps, which our listeners may know as the movie where Tom Atkins goes thrill me and spoilers, gets blown up and becomes a zombie at the end of the movie.
I can't remember what movie he did before that as just a writer. I just seem to remember those two movies being his great movies. But then
I can tell you exactly what it is. Fred Decker wrote a lot of movies that some of them got made, some of them didn't. He wrote a script called House that he wrote House to be like the most terrifying thing ever. He put everything he was scared of in one movie, and the script got sold and made by Sean S. Cunningham, the guy who directed the first Friday the 13th, and turned into a comedy starring William Catt and the fat guy from Cheers, George Wendt. Yeah, and
George Wendt.
it was a good movie, but it was not scary.
No,
So
it's
Fred
definitely not scary. It's definitely, but that's another fun movie. I think I have it on our list to watch one day. Not you. I don't think you're on signed up for that one. I absolutely love that movie, and I love Fred Dekker. It was a shame that I think the last film he did was RoboCop 3, which was
oh yeah,
well received, and he hasn't done any movies as a director since. It's very sad because he did two of
yeah,
the best ones.
yeah. I think he passed away recently. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. But like I said, like as I was saying earlier, like I did not see the opening crawl that starts this movie that says that Van Helsing and his quote freedom fighters were fighting against Dracula, and I noticed that terminology. I'm like, this movie came out in '87. Were they make some kind of political statement? Like, was Dracula like being like a dictator of Transylvania, and like what? Like I never thought of them as freedom fighters. Like what are they? Like does that strike you as weird to me? Because that strikes me as weird.
It only struck me as weird until I realized that he has. I think I can't remember if he does in RoboCop 3, but it does it at the beginning of Night of the Creeps, where he explains what's going on before it goes into the actual film. Um,
Right.
it seems really weird that he does that, but it adds a different layer to that entire beginning sequence to Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps. It was like we just jump straight into the story here.
Yeah.
Like,
Although we would be remiss though if we didn't mention the other big creative influence in the script of this movie, which is Shane Black,
oh yeah, yep.
the guy who wrote Lethal Weapon, also wrote this movie.
He had to start somewhere, and to give him credit, Monster Squad is a buddy group ensemble film, and of course, Lethal Weapon's one of the greatest buddy cop movies ever made.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
did what the one with Russell Crowe and what's his face? Ryan Gosling. I think it's Ryan Gosling. The detective one, which I absolutely love too. I wish I could remember it because you just brought it up, and now you brought Shane Black, and I can't remember what the hell the movie is. I can
Well,
see
Shane like wrote and directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Robert Downey
which is
Jr.
also good.
Yeah. And that other movie I think you're thinking of is The Nice Guys.
The Nice Guys, that's it.
Yes.
He's so good at writing these buddy comedy movies or ensemble films like that. He was so good at that. I have no idea why he did RoboCop 3.
I have no idea why that, and I have no idea why Shane thought he could revive the Predator franchise either, just because he was in Predator 1. That doesn't give you. I mean, we won't dwell on that.
Getting back to the Monster Squad, though.
But another thing that bugged me recently when I rewatched the movie on Paramount Plus is about the crawl. Is the great gag that I was cheated out of because my mom edited the movie terribly. Is that at the end it says, they tried to stop the forces of evil on that night, and they blew it. It literally says they blew it. And then after I watched that and then watched the scene, I'm like, so how did they blow it? Because like it's never made very clear exactly how they screw up. Because like they get there, they're on their horses, sort of kind of, but they get in there and there's the amulet. Well, before that, you see Dracula in like a great practical effects scene where he's a bat and becomes human. And that was ingrained in my head too. But then he does nothing. You don't see Dracula the rest of the sequence. You just see Vampire Babe who's munching on a possum for reasons. And they kill Vampire Possum Babe, who actually I think in the credits is listed as Vampire Munching on Possum. And, and then they have this little virgin girl talking. We'll get to that later because that's a whole thing. Saying the words from the magic book in front of the amulet, which, by the way, was only being guarded by Possum Vampire Chomper. Like, why? Although we find out later, after she starts reading and the storm starts and everything, that there were also zombies guarding it. So I got that going for him. But, like, what did they do wrong? I mean, did they say the wrong? Was it like a Klaatu Barada Nikto kind of thing? Because that would at least make sense.
Well, they just banished Dracula, and of course Dracula comes back even
But
more.
that's another thing. You never see him go into limbo in that movie. In the beginning of the movie, you only see the poor little virgin girl get sucked in, a couple of his guys, and Van Helsing gets sucked in. So like all the wrong people get sucked in. Dracula didn't even show up. So for all we know, Dracula's just been putzing around for about 150 years. Well, no, for 100 years, just doing whatever. I don't know. What's he been doing? They never explain it.
It's
They never.
it's a plot hole. It's a plot hole that they don't have to explain because you know why? Because the Wolfman has nards, and he shows up, and the creature from the Black Lagoon shows up, and the mummy shows up, and of course Frankenstein's monster shows up, and all of Dracula's stuff is like put off to the side. Because to be honest with you, a lot of the other monsters are much more interesting than Dracula was for me.
I don't know about you, though. I mean, I agree to a certain extent, but man, this is. I mean, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, by the way. But this is, I think, gosh, what was his name? Duncan Rygar. I think Duncan Rygar's Dracula is like one of the best Draculas that's been out there. And I think Wizard Magazine put him in the top 10 of best Dracula.
Really?
Yeah, when I looked it up, Wizard Magazine listed him in 2006 as one of the best Draculas. And
Interesting.
yeah, and you look at him. I saw, and on the DVD I have, there's like a few interviews with him. He's talking about his process, how he approached Dracula, as just like a regular like sociopath, except of course for the times when Shirley the director told him to go way over the top, like when he finds the amulet. There's no one to stop us. If they just cut that part, he would have been just a perfect like Hannibal Lecter type bad guy the whole time.
Uh,
But we'll get into it. Quick fun fact: the armadillos in the castle. That's a homage to the Bela Lugosi because there were armadillos in the castle in the Bela Lugosi Dracula.
really?
Yeah, because of where they shot it, the armadillos just kind of crept into the studio. There are no armadillos in Indigenous to Transylvania. Just putting that out there, or possums. But they put them in the movie. They put them in this movie because homage.
I could see that. I could see Fred Decker doing that without a doubt. I kind of wonder sometimes what audience he was going for when he did this movie because I don't recall there being any other movie like this in which I know he was probably trying to make a horror monster version of the Goonies, but
Oh yeah, for
to,
sure.
to be honest with you, there's no other movies like this at that time period, really.
No,
It,
there isn't. This movie is really the end of an era
yeah,
because this is the last time, and it still hasn't happened. This is the last time that all, except for the Invisible Man, that all of the Universal horror monsters have been together in a live action movie. This is it, and there hasn't been one since. And unfortunately, because Dark Universe wasn't a thing and will never be a
yeah.
thing, it's not going to happen probably for a very long time. So it's not just that, but like you were right, they're like, who is this movie for? Uh, Probably came up a lot in studio notes and was probably part of the reason why it didn't do very well because it's way too hard for the PG rating it probably would have gotten if it were released a couple of years earlier. But this movie is hard PG-13.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not. We're not even talking about the language. There's gore in this movie at the end when Wolfman, going ahead, spoilers, when Wolfman gets exploded.
Yes, exactly.
You see his wolf guts. Camera pans slowly. There's wolf intestines and a wolf bloody stump. I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't think anything of it as a kid because I just thought, oh, that's just what happened. Wolf blows up. But we'll get into.
You're right because I don't think I got. I think it was a little bit over my head when I first saw it. The whole thing about the virgin sacrifice, and of course it gets revealed that the person that everyone thinks is a virgin obviously is no longer a virgin. And so stuff like that. You're right. I think a much more innocent. If you were to put this type of age group in a movie, it'd probably be watered down and made more PC by Disney. You know, I could,
Or like I could see Netflix doing this as a series, filtering it through that Stranger Things kind of audience.
well, Stranger Things isn't really for kids either.
Oh no, not now. Especially that last season was very hard.
Yeah,
PG
I could
sometimes.
say, you know what? The first season, I could see that being closer. I mean, my wife doesn't watch Stranger Things because she thought it was got too scary and too dark for her. But I can see the
Mm.
first season, like you're saying, would be probably more for kids or younger audiences. But you know, Monster Squad in the '80s, that was like who are you making this movie for? You're making it for us monster kids, and there's not many of us that were going to the movies back then. You know.
Yeah, because parents wouldn't let us. I mean, there's two kinds of. I find there's two kinds of horror kids. There is the monster kids, like you and me, and then there's the slasher kids.
Hmm.
And very rarely do they ever come between. Although this movie seems to kind of suggest that maybe there's at least one or two people who can go back and forth. It's apparently Sean, the leader of the kids, he is apparently also a slasher kid because he keeps trying to beg his dad to take him to this slasher movie at the drive-in called Groundhog Day, which I completely forgot that was the name of it. Or no, it was sorry, it was Groundhog Day like part 12 or something.
It was probably
And when he said that, I laughed a lot because it made me think, oh, how funny it would be if it was just like Bill Murray running around with an axe killing people.
yes. Oh my God, that was so funny. And you know, you when you mentioned it, you're probably right because I was a monster kid. My brother liked watching the slasher films, so I watched the Friday 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street with him growing up. I learned to appreciate them later in life, but I was a huge monster kid. I fucking watched all the Godzilla movies, Ultraman. Dude, I grew up watching those type of movies, and my brother looks at me and like, what are you watching? And that's how he always was when I watched weird movies. I think the only one me and him ever agreed on was Big Trouble in Little China. I think that one is the one that he really loved and we both agreed on. But like Buckaroo Banzai, you're like, this movie is silly. This is weird. What the hell are you watching? Monster Squad, this is weird. What the hell are you watching? Yeah, I think I didn't think about it till now, but I agree with you there. In the '80s, there was there's the hardcore slasher, and then there's monster movies, and I think I never knew that they didn't cross. I kind of watched a little bit of everything, but I love my monster movies, dude.
Yeah,
Love.
I think you get a little bit of bleed over sometimes with the zombie movies because of the gore factor. Because the gore stuff usually will attract the slasher people, and of course we like the zombies, so we go for the zombies. So that's probably why zombies were pretty big in the from this late '70s to even like the late '80s,
Mhm.
because there was that little bleed over, of course. And talking about the kids again, going back to the principal when we first introduced these kids, the principal's office scene, which I think is a great efficient way to introduce these kids. What I was struck by looking at them was like, dang, these kids are mean. They are a-holes. Because like I didn't notice because like here's another thing I noticed is like, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of guy who I watch the movie and I also put closed captions on because I want to know what all the dialogue is, and I learned so many words that I could not comprehend when I first saw it because part of the reason why it was on VHS and the sound wasn't so great.
Yeah.
But like they make fun of their teacher with the cat ears so horribly. Like they're saying things like, "Oh gosh," like I wrote down what they said. They said like something like, "Oh, a man kisses her at night. Ew, a priest actually said man and wife to that." I'm like, that's so mean. What this poor lady's crying? She does her hair up like a cat.
Oh
That's your
my God. Uh,
terrible.
yeah, and unfortunately, us kids were like that. When you say that, it brings me back to the horrible kids, and how they treated people in the original Sleepaway Camp that cussed all the time and said bad things all the time. I was like,
Uh,
you can't forget that there are some kids like that out there at that time.
it's funny too because it's like they, in a way, kind of bully that teacher Well, they are also getting bullied by these two kids. And then in comes my favorite character in the whole daggum movie, Rudy, the older kid with the black leather jacket, who stands up for them and makes the bully eat a candy bar that was on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
I freaking love Rudy because, like, I love characters who stand up for the little guy, but
Yeah.
also, like, everything he does has clear motivations. Like, how do you, like, you have, this is kind of a screenwriting problem if you think about it. Like, you have this older kid, this cool kid with the black leather and the greasy hair. We got to have him in there for reasons that we'll probably get into later, because he ends up being, like, the major monster killer
Yeah.
in this squad. But, like, why would this older cool kid hang out with kids in a treehouse, in a monster club? Well, they solved that problem pretty easily without much dialogue by just having him peek out the window of said treehouse to look in the window of the girl who is stripping naked. So of course he's got their binoculars. That's why he wants to be in the club. He doesn't really like monsters that much. He knows something.
No.
He goes there for the chick. So that makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense for us as we're watching it now as adults, but when you were watching it as a kid, some of that stuff goes right over your head. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He's checking out the chick next door. That's what we all, yeah.
And I completely forgot that chick in the window, the girl. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say chick. That's not nice.
It's not PG or PC.
But like I didn't realize until years later that it was the same girl who later on they try to get to be the virgin.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what? Okay, that's where it came from.
Yes, the one who's not really a virgin. So the promiscuous character who doesn't get killed in the movie.
That's right. Well, we don't know if she's really promiscuous. She just mentions that one guy who didn't count, Steve.
It didn't count. Didn't count.
Like, why doesn't Steve count? What happened?
Oh my god, this movie is so funny. Oh, it's still funny. It's still fun. It still makes me laugh every time I watch it because it's so timeless.
Yeah, there's so many funny little moments in there. Like, oh gosh, like, I've got some things in here. First inclination. Oh, Well, of course, like we go back to like, oh, I love how the mummy, like this. Okay, so like the one kid in the gang that I probably identify with the most though at the time was Eugene, the little kid, because that's pretty much how old I was then. Yeah. I think it's funny, maybe not laugh out loud, haha, but it's funny how this kid who is seemingly scared of monsters and has a literal monster in his literal closet. You look at his room, and he's got a My Pet Monster. I have a pet monster. He's got all these monsters. A Punisher poster on his wall. I mean, kids' rooms in the 80s were freaking amazing, but if you believe the movies. But like, he's got monster friends all over the wall, and then he's finally got a real monster in his closet. And like, the dad doesn't even look at it. I mean, why the mummy is there in his closet, we have no idea. And like, the mummy moves faster than he has ever moved in history. When the dad leaves and Eugene looks back and he's just bandages walking out of the window.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I timed it. That was half a second. There's no way that mummy went.
Oh my god! Oh, you timed it. Yeah, you're probably right about that, but we'll have a little suspension of disbelief because they have to give something for the mummy to do in this movie. They literally get rid of him by unwrapping him.
Oh yeah, my gosh! Like, oh man, but you know what the mummy really does in this movie? The mummy apparently is Dracula's butler, because if you notice in that first scene when they're resurrecting Frankenstein, which again, yes, even the movie knows his name is not Frankenstein. It's just what they call him because the movies. But they know that Frankenstein is the creator, not the monster. But they just call him Frankenstein. But anyway, like when they're zapping him back to life, Dracula's standing there all like cool, and then he's got the stick, the silver cane with electrodes on it, which, by the way, apparently they ripped that off from Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And he gives this cane to, like, hold this, like, hold my cane. And that's what the mummy does. He holds Dracula's cane.
You know, so I didn't notice that. The mummy is Dracula's butler. It's very interesting.
Another thing that's weird about the mummy, I don't know if you realize this, but like when the dad, the cop, comes in and is investigating the apparent theft of said mummy from the museum, and he says that great immortal line, a 2,000-year-old dead guy doesn't just get up and walk away. Cut to 2,000-year-old dead guy walking. Okay, this mummy is 2,000 years old. That's a very young mummy. By mummy standards, that mummy is very young. That mummy knew Jesus. That mummy was from Egypt under Roman occupation. So that's weird to me. Like they picked that. I mean, they could have said 3,000 years old. That would have made sense. I mean, that would have been like, the Boris Karloff mummy, or 2000. But they picked a Ptolemaic mummy for reasons. I don't know.
That's actually quite funny that you mentioned that. I never thought about that until now, but that's really quite funny.
Things you think about when you watch this as a movie. Also, when you watch it as an adult, but like, also how funny is it like that? Like shortly after that, or right around that, Sean, the leader, is like he has that aha moment where his mom has posted on the message on the bulletin board, which I couldn't read until I could read as a child. Mr. Alucard asking about Van Helsing diary, because that's like the MacGuffin of this movie is Van Helsing's diary.
Yeah.
He's like, and she's like, interested in Van Helsing's diary, possible $, $.
You have to read from the book.
So apparently Dracula called the school to try to get Sean to, with the temptation of paying him money to get this book. And of course he has that brilliant deduction of just making it backwards, and Alucard is Dracula. Which him being a monster kid, no, because Son of Dracula, which was I think the second Dracula sequel after Dracula's Daughter, Son of Dracula with Lon Chaney Jr., Dracula was walking around calling himself Alucard in that movie. You would think he would think of this a little earlier if he knew that movie, but maybe he didn't. But yeah, that's where they get that from, the whole backwards thing.
I know they've used it a lot in more modern vampire films. Alucard. Something recently, and I can't think of what it was, though, to save my life. Unfortunately, I watch too many fucking movies, so sometimes some of this stuff gets mixed in my head, but I try not to do.
I know for a fact that they use a version of that in the Dracula TV series from, I think, the 2000s, where Dracula is, like, in modern day, and he's, like, the head of a corporation, and he calls himself Alexander Lucard. Lucard.
I'm trying.
That's like the only creative version of that I've ever seen.
Huh. That's not. I'm trying to think. Is that the one with I think it's Jonathan Rhys Miller?
No. I think you're thinking of one of the miniseries. No, this was a literal. I don't know if it went on for any more than one season, but it was like a Canadian-based TV series called Dracula, and it was just like Dracula runs a corporation and also kills people. And then the show was just about like people trying to unmask him or something. It was like, what if Lex Luthor was a vampire, basically?
Well, the thing is, Dracula keeps getting used, abused, and reused constantly. I think
Dracula gets all kinds of messed up.
I think twice this year I mentioned this to Sonia Thompson, who's also one of the guest hosts for some of the episodes. She just seen Dracula Untold for the first time, and I mentioned Renfield, which came out this year, and the last voyage of the Demeter, which came out this year. And Dracula seems to be coming back, not so popular considering that neither one of the movies did well at the box office. Neither of the three movies did well at the box office. Let's just say that. But for this movie, Monster Squad, Dracula is like the main villain, and all the other ones are henchmen, except for
Frankenstein, who's just a straight up turncoat. Frankenstein's interesting in this movie too. And I want to jump back to talk about Scary German Guy because he's also very interesting. But we'll talk about Frankenstein for a little bit. So Tom Noonan plays Frankenstein. May remember him from Red Dragon, and also Last Action Hero is what I knew him from as the axe killer in Last Action Hero. I actually love his performance as Frankenstein for what he is. The choices he made as an actor are pretty cool, and I think it's interesting how. And I only got this take just from this viewing of it is people think of if you're just looking at this movie like first gloss, you think that the Frankenstein monster is like a simpleton kind of childlike creature that is used by poor Dracula. He's really a good guy inside. I beg to differ. I think that the Frankenstein monster in this is basically like a cipher. He's neutral. He is good or evil depending on who is controlling him.
Interesting.
If Dracula were controlling him, he would be a raging monster that killed children, and probably has in the past. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked him to do this in the present. But because he's won over by Phoebe, my second favorite character in the whole movie. Come on, guys, don't be chickens.
Oh God, you're so right.
You're my friends. She's so beautiful, and her innocence just wins him over. And because from that moment she is his master, he obeys her, and she turns this monster into a guy who's willing to play dress up with a 5-year-old girl, and wear silly hats and look at pictures of naked girls with shades on, and maybe walk down the roads in the sunset, all ET style. But if he were ever to go back, or some crazy mad scientist who wanted to take over the world got a hold of him, he'd probably go right back to his ways, because he's a monster deep down inside. I think that's why ultimately Limbo takes him at the end. Spoilers, because no matter what, he's still a monster, and monsters go to Limbo.
Yes, but that that plays into the whole theme with is it Eugene, the one who's afraid of monsters? And I'm trying to remember all the characters' names now. The thing is that he's afraid of monsters, but by the end of the movie, none of them are afraid of monsters. And they've created this group. I love the scene when the cop comes up to them, and at the very end of the movie, and says, "Who are you guys?" And they all say, "We're the monsters." They're like, they have no more fears. They are now a team, a group of friends battling their fears and battling real life monsters in the real world, or the real world, so to speak. And that journey it's surprisingly something very similar to the journey of the characters in Goonies, who all the younger kids are banding together with the good kids in order to save their their family home and find this treasure and all that type of stuff. That's not important as much as it is for the fact that this is the last time all of these best friends are going to get together before they get split up. And this movie here, Monster Squad, is a movie in which all of these kids from different types. You have your favorite character again, the oldest kid, Rudy. Rudy is the outsider who looks after them when there's the bullies around. But by the end of the movie, they could take care of themselves. I can't remember the bigger kid's name.
Fat kid, otherwise known as Horace.
Horace, when he has to show them off with the creature from the Black Lagoon. I love that scene.
Freaking shotguns the creature in the chest.
I love that scene.
Turns around, And the kid's like, the bullies who bullied him before called him fat kid. And he's like, fat kid, good job. My name is Horace.
I love that. And those things right there are some of the elements I think that makes the movie timeless and also makes it interesting for audiences to watch it repeatedly, as I have done. But the thing is, it wasn't like this easily throwaway movie with, just a bunch of monsters and some kids who get chased by monsters and stuff like that. These kids have their own, and this is probably part of the great writing that goes into this movie. These kids each have their own individual problems. One really does get bullied a lot. The other one has parental issues. And of course, you have the one who's afraid of monsters. But all their issues are collide when these monsters, all these different types of monsters, appear. And even the one who has, he has issues with his father, and his father by the end sees that his son isn't like he's a grown up. He's grown up. He's not like this little meek little kid by the end of the movie anymore.
Oh, not just that, but he gets to fight monsters with his son.
Yeah,
they literally like they shit, like he shoots Dracula, and the kid like punches the werewolf and like stick of dynamite in the wolf's pants equals exploding werewolf. Oh man, that's twice we mentioned that. We will get back to it because there's so much implicate that whole exploding werewolf thing is part of what makes the writing in this movie really good, is that it answers questions you may have had in the back of your mind. Like, yeah, we all know, and they talk about this in the Rudy's questionnaire portion. Well, how do you kill a werewolf? There's two ways to kill a werewolf: silver bullet and what? Nope. There's only one way to kill a werewolf. So, but what happened if you use any other way to kill a werewolf other than silver bullet? This movie answers that question in the most awesome way possible.
It does. And I was trying to think of any other movie that does something similar, but this is probably the only one I can think of that does it so damn well. You literally blow him to bits, and it doesn't matter. It wasn't a silver bullet, and his body reconstitutes itself. And you literally yeah, it was so good, so good. Oh my god.
There isn't any other movie that does that, because every other movie just kind of fudges the werewolf myth a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like The Howling, I think, fudges it a little bit by having it where the full moon has nothing to do with them. They just turn into a werewolf whenever they want, which is also kind of an issue in this movie too, because the full moon is definitely a thing, but there's only one full moon a month, and this movie clearly only takes place over like 4 days. And there's only one full moon you see in the whole movie that turns him into a werewolf, right after the awesome scene where he gets shot, lock me up, bang, bang, bang. By the way, this movie is edited amazingly. But the full moon turns him, a dead man, into a living wolf. But then why does he turn into a werewolf any other night when there's no full moon? I thought the reason was this: that next time you see him, he's tied up in the chair in Dracula's stronghold, which, by the way, is a Southern Confederate plantation. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Which makes this movie a Southern movie. They have swamps. They have a plantation. The movie could be in Georgia for all we know.
Oh my god, you're so right. You're so right. I always recognize the swamp, but I didn't think about the fact that the houses look like a fucking Southern plantation. Oh my god.
It totally is. So he's tied up, and he's like, you see the sleeping pills, and Dracula's like, I regret the dosage, but it would be fatal by human standards. But then again, human standards don't apply to us, do they? So the implication is he is given pills to this guy to kill him as a human, because if you kill him as a human, he'll become a werewolf. So that's an interesting idea, that if you want a werewolf as a human to become a werewolf at will, just kill him, and he'll come back as a werewolf.
Interesting.
That doesn't really work, because he spits the pills out as soon as Dracula leaves the room and unties himself and goes to a phone booth in a gas station and calls Sean's dad, warning him, and that, of course, leads him to confrontation with Dracula later.
Oh, that's right.
So then you have to ask yourself, well, why the heck did how did he turn that second time? Was it a new moon? Because there are times where you have like 2 full moons a month, where it's like a full moon and a new moon right after another. I don't know, but if they'd been consistent with that idea, it would have been interesting. But I don't feel like they did. They almost did. If they just wrote it a little bit more.
Well, now that you mentioned it, I would have never thought about it, but now that you mentioned it, and that's what this conversation is about. I'm now gonna go back and rewatch it with these new ideas that you put in my head now.
Oh, let me put in another one and this is going to bring us down to a little more serious. We were talking earlier about what makes a monster, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I love about this movie is how broad its definition of monster is, because you have the scene. So the kids take the diary, which is in German, to the only German guy they know, the scary German guy who lives down the street, and literally his name in the credits is Scary German Guy. He has no other name. And he's played by a fantastic character actor whose name I do not remember, but whose face has been in everything. Everything. And right after Scary German Guy is done, the exposition dump as he translates the diary, saying that every 100 years the amulet of pure concentrated good becomes vulnerable to the forces of evil. So but if you say this ritual by a virgin on that night, which they never say exactly what that night is, I like to imagine it's Halloween, but we never see anybody dressing up. So
Costumes, no.
Yeah, so I don't know what time of the year it is, but anyway, he says that if we just this ritual, limbo, a portal to limbo will open up and suck out all the monsters, and he says the balance of good and evil will be restored, which sounds very Star Warsy, a little Buddhist, but when he leaves, when he lets the kids leave, taking their book back with him, he's like, the fat kid's like, "Wow, you really know a lot about monsters, don't you?" And he's like, "Well, you might say I kind of do." And as he closes the door, camera pans on him, and you see he's got an Auschwitz tattoo on his arm. So he's talking about Nazis. So this movie tells you, the viewer, if you are a parent and you tell your kids, like the principal does at the beginning of this movie, that there are no such thing as monsters, shame on you.
Wow.
Because there are.
Never noticed that. Now when I rewatch it again, I'll have to take a look at that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's the value of why it's important, why gateway horror is important. And this is a gateway horror movie.
It definitely is.
Is that it introduces kids to a medium in which they can confront their fears in a comfortable sort of way, but also it's a primer for them to kind of come into the world with a clear eye, because parents have to tell them that the world's a scary place. And these monsters are metaphors for the things that can kill you, the things that can hurt you. There's Dracula is the predator.
Yeah.
Wolfman is the guy who seems like he's nice, but when the wound is full and bright, he becomes a monster. Mummy is the thing in your closet, I guess. I don't know. Mummy's weird, but anyway, Creature from the Black Lagoon is the reason you don't swim anywhere where you can't see the bottom, because there might be a thing down there, you might drown. Creature from the Black Lagoon is kind of weird too. But anyway, so like all these things are metaphors for real evils and real monsters in this world. I mean, don't dare tell your kids there's no such thing as monsters, because like the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer who survived will tell you, no, monsters are real. I met one, he tried to kill me. So yeah, that's one of the many reasons why I love monster movies, and that's why these monsters will never die. They'll always come back.
I and you say that, and of course, as we all know, there's going to be two new Godzilla movies coming out. One just came out in Japan now, And of course, the next Godzilla Kong movie comes out next year. But I've been inundating my young son to the original Godzilla films over the last couple months. Uh, I'm changing him into a monster kid. I don't think he's ready for Monster Squad yet. He's
Yeah.
5 years old. I think that might be a little bit much for him right now. Uh, but for some reason, he absolutely loves Godzilla, and that could be because I've shown him all of the early ones, so the kid friendly ones, the black and white ones. He's seen all those. Rodan, he's seen all that. It could just be because I think that he's one of those kids now where he's 5 years old and he's going through knowing what monsters are and he's got fear of the dark and stuff like that. But the Godzilla movies have helped him. Just like when I was younger, Monster Squad probably didn't help me in the same way because I wasn't really afraid of the dark, but it did help me overcome things like the bullies as a monster. There was a bully in my school when I was growing up. The movie didn't help me overcome the bully. What it did help me is recognize what a bully was. I don't think I actually really, really knew what a bully was when I was that age when I originally saw the movie because I think it was 13, maybe 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there. I know it was teen. I can't remember.
You were older than I was for sure. I think I probably
when did this come out? 87, 88?
87.
So 87, I was 7, 8, I was 11, 12. I was about 11, 12, somewhere around there. So, God, I grew up on this fucking movie. Oh my God. I was 12 years old when I saw this movie for the first time.
You were at just that sweet spot. And I agree with you. My son's a little too, he's not ready for it either. He's 11 though, but he's very sensitive. I've been trying to get him into Godzilla. He didn't quite have it. I've been trying to get him into the monsters. He had a very interesting reaction to Frankenstein. I'll tell you real quick. The original Frankenstein. I tried to show him just a clip of the original Frankenstein. And I was talking to him about, I don't know how we got into this, but I was talking to him about monsters. And I think I talked about, I was trying to tell him, now I remember what it was. Brain Pop mentioned Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the app that teaches kids about stuff. And so I told him the full story of the Frankenstein monster. And he's like, would you like to see Frankenstein? So I went into my phone, found a YouTube clip of the scene when you first see the monster. Now, this scene is fairly legendary because it was seen as one of the scariest moments in the movie, but it's weird looking at it today because all it is Frankenstein opens the door and the monster walks backwards and then slowly turns around. And you see him in medium shot, and all of a sudden, jump cut close to his face like this. And people nowadays watch that and think, how could they think that was scary? Oh my gosh, that's just awkward.
Go ahead.
I showed that to my son, when he was I think 9, my 9-year-old autistic son, and he saw that and he gasped at the jump cut. He went, and so I thought, that's what the audiences in 1931 were like. They were like little children.
Well, they never see anything like that either. You got to keep in mind that Dracula was ahead of its time. But if you watch it now, and I don't prefer was it Todd Browning's Dracula? I think it's Todd Browning did the first Dracula. I actually prefer the Mexican version of it, which was shot at the exact same time and the exact same sets. I actually believe they did a much better job.
Yeah,
doing that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
But Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are two of my all-time favorite classic movies. And so is The Mummy, because I'm a huge Mummy fan too. No one ever does The Mummy justice in my opinion, except for those early ones.
Even this movie, because it's The Mummy. So The Mummy in this one, I don't know how it happened, but the original Mummy in Boris Karloff's Mummy is more like the Mummy in the Brendan Fraser version, where he's a calculating wizard type guy. Mm-hmm. He has dialogue, but ever since that movie, all of the Mummy sequels, The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Ghost, all that, those do a different mummy named Karis. and he's kind of the lumbering Frankenstein with bandages, basically, except he's got a broken arm and limps.
Yeah.
That's, I think, where we get the stereotypical view of the mummy, and that is pretty much what we see here, except much more skeletal.
Yeah, I was
And
about to say that.
it must be like I think they had a female stunt woman inside that suit, because usually women, because if you're gonna have somebody play a emaciated skeletal thing, you get a very small female stunt woman because they'll look more like negative space. They did that on Army of Darkness as well. So, yeah. So watching it again, I'm like, oh, maybe the mummy is a woman. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, of course, this movie is a classic way of destroying the mummy, which was just take a little piece of the slack, put it on a bow and arrow, throw the arrow to a tree when you're in a car, and unwraps till there's just dust and a skull.
Yeah, that was probably the most original way to dispatch a mummy that I've ever seen. And then he never shows back up in the rest of the movie.
Nope, he's just gone. I mean, like, it's funny because, like, in those Universal mummy movies, the sequels, the Karras mummy is practically indestructible.
Yeah.
Like, gets shot, stabbed, burned, electrocuted, crushed by a temple. He gets blown up, and then he's fine next movie. I mean, like, almost all these Universal monsters are nigh indestructible, except for, like, the Invisible Man, who's just a guy. And, of course, Phantom of the Opera is also just a guy.
That's right. That's right.
But they all are, like, nigh indestructible, especially, like, the Frankenstein monster. The Frankenstein monster is life from death. So he is indestructible. You cannot kill Frankenstein. The only way I think you could kill the Frankenstein monster is if he is, like, you have to have fire, which is one thing they didn't touch on in this movie I thought was interesting, is, like, they never do the whole fire bad thing.
Yeah.
That was a missed opportunity. But
they have so many characters, and
it's only so many
with you.
Yeah, you're right.
To be honest with you, the mummy's not exactly the most interesting character monster. They had a lot more leeway, and we don't know what was left of the cutting room floor, but they got a lot out of the Wolfman, and Wolfman got a lot of great.
Yeah, I think so. And, like, Wolfman having nards. That's a question nobody thought to answer, but this movie answered it. Kicking Wolf in the nards, which one thing of course, so let's go back to that scene, because, like, I always thought it's a little awkward that the Wolfman just kind of stands there while they're debating about whether they should kick him in the nards. Like, if it's really were a werewolf, they would just be dead right there and then. But so my headcanon for why it takes half a second, he's just like going, is that he's still a guy underneath, and maybe the guy is wrestling for control of the werewolf. He's, like, stopping him a little bit. It's just long enough for a fat kid to kick him in the balls.
And don't get me wrong, but isn't this the movie where the actor gets shot with the silver bullet, or the werewolf gets shot with a silver bullet? It turns back into the original guy, and he says, "Thank you," right?
It totally is. I mean, that actually happens pretty much across the board, no matter what werewolf mythos they're doing. Yeah, even in American Werewolf in London, they did this. Every time the werewolf gets killed, he instantly comes back to being a human. So, like, even in American Werewolf in London, where they use regular old bullets to kill him, boom, he's back to being naked David again. But yeah, like, that little scene where he's like, "Thank you," keels over. Like, that goes into, I think, what's going through Rudy's head when he's like, because Rudy kills that monster. He kills Wolfman. He kills the 3 brides of Dracula. Well, not brides, but the 3 kidnapped vampire girls. He stakes them right through the heart. And, like, I think they give Rudy that because it would be weird to see these little kids, like, going around just, like, murdering these like, mostly humanoid monsters, Oh, when he kills the mummy too, I forgot. He's the one who got the arrow.
Arrows. It's the arrow.
So Rudy, like, does most of the heavy lifting. And, like, another reason why I love this actor, crap, I forgot. I wrote down his name, but it's like he makes these little choices, like when after he's staked the girls, other stuff happens, and they come back to him. And this is in the middle of the street as the climax of the movie, as they're trying to say the incantation to open limbo. He makes this little, like, he's staked these girls, and he's just sitting there, looking at their dead bodies what have I done? Like a PTSD soldier or something. And I just thought, oh, that's such a neat little choice. Because like not every actor would do that. Not every actor would think to do that, but he did. And I thought, oh, good on you, Ryan. Gosh, what was his name? Anyway, we'll call him Rudy for now. Cause I know he has a name, but yeah, he's
But
pretty
keep in
interesting.
mind, you mentioned the scene earlier where the reason why he's with the Monster Squad is because he got a glimpse of the girl next door who he was attracted to and who he
Yeah.
had words later on in the film with.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like it is funny because like he has to ask her, "Are you a virgin?" But he doesn't ask her that. He says, "Have you ever been dorked?"
Oh, that's right. He says that. Have you ever been dorked?
Not a phrase anybody has ever used at any point in history to refer to that, but it's consistent within the movie, in the very least. I mean, this movie. I mean, people pick apart its flaws all the time, but this movie is there's a lot of good setup and payoff
Yeah.
in things, especially like almost everything is set up and paid off. But like this is a setup and payoff too because Wolf, earlier the kids refer to not just the Wolfman having nards, but the Wolfman having to wear clothes, especially pants, because otherwise you see his wolf dork. So yeah,
Oh my
it's
God.
so it makes sense if you're calling a penis a dork. Well, then if you've been dorked, then that means penetrated by a dork.
Oh my God.
Makes sense.
You're absolutely right. I didn't think about any of that when I was
These
see.
are these are the things that keep me up at night.
Well, these are the things that when I have these conversations with my guests, when I go back and rewatch the films, I have a different aspect to look for and to appreciate because I would have never thought about it had you not mentioned it at all. Oh my God.
It's great. It totally is great. So, oh gosh, and another question that people always like, I wonder, like the whole garlic thing, like fat kid gets to burn Dracula's face with pizza, and like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I never yeah, that would work. If you think about it. Although that does make sense. What doesn't make sense though is that the second before that happens is Sean's got the amulet as they get it out of his southern fortress,
Mhm.
and and all of a sudden, bam, Dracula comes up in a jump scare. Give it to me! Give it to me! I'm like, wait, why don't you just take it? So I guess there's a
Oh
thing that
yeah.
they never address, which is apparently Dracula can't just take the amulet. Someone has to give it to him.
Huh.
And it's not just Yeah, and it's not just that scene. It's later on when the kids have got the amulet and they're like, "We got to get to somewhere where we can, where we can do the incantations." Like, and the German guy goes, "There's an old church in the town square. Great, monsters hate religious stuff. Let's go there." And they go, and they're doing the thing. The monsters come. They kill the monsters one by one, two by two, three by three, and when Dracula, comes back from getting shot and getting thrown out of the building, he's he does this great. Aaron Sorkin has the walk and talk, but Dracula has the walk and kill. He goes and he just walks. He's got electricity around him for reasons, and every cop, the sheriffs all
Yeah.
come and stop him, and it's just first cop in the face, second cop break his neck, third cop twist his arm, he's down, fourth cop crushing his head, fifth cop does something else to him. I mean, it's PG-13, so you never see him rip someone's heart out or anything, but he doesn't stop walking. They just walk and kill. And then he gets to poor Phoebe and lifts her up by the chin and can't take the amulet. He demands, "Give it to me, you bitch," and does his vamp thing. But he can't take it for reasons. And the only thing I could think of to justify it is the whole vampires can't enter your home because you have to invite them in.
Hmm.
And the amulet's supposed to be like pure concentrated good, so maybe he can't touch it because of that. I don't know. It's a weird, yeah, it's a weird thing I never thought of before. Another thing about that scene I didn't think of until watching it is like, he's doing the walk and kill, coming up to poor Phoebe, and zaps scary German guy, which I didn't know Dracula had that power, but okay. Uh, and Sean is stopping his father from saving Phoebe. He's like, "No, Dad, don't." And I'm like, "Why would you stop him?" And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. Number one, Sean has just seen Dracula murder 16 cops with his bare hands, not stopping to even walk. Which, by the way, if I ever make a movie, I want to have a scene where a character does the walk and kill, because that's awesome. But Frankenstein comes up, says "bogus," and punches Dracula onto a cross and impales him. So I think the real reason why Sean kept his dad from doing it, because A, he didn't want his dad to get killed. B, we know how slow Frankenstein is. Sean clearly saw Frankenstein walking up to him a mile away. And he's basically like, "It's okay, Dad, Frankenstein's got this." Another fun fact about that I learned on the DVD is, going back to why Tom Noonan is such a cool actor. He talked about that scene and how he said the expression on Frankenstein's face is one of just joy. As he turns his master around and just punches him, he's so happy. And Tom Noonan said that was the only time on set that he ever fought with the director.
Really?
Yes, it was the only time they had a conflict about anything, and they had a big long argument about how he was supposed to play that scene, because apparently in the script Frankenstein's supposed to be mad and angry, but Tom Noonan was like, "No, this is how I get revenge. I smile." So, and that was just his brilliant choice as an actor, and Fred Dekker just wouldn't let him do it until Tom Noonan put his Franken foot down, and it was like, "Okay, we'll do it your way." And sure enough, it was the right choice. So that's a reminder for you filmmakers out there. Listen to your actors, especially if they're fun guys, if they're like Juilliard trained guys like Tom Noonan. Sometimes they know what they're talking about.
Now I'm thinking about it, what do you recall if this one came out before or after Night of the Creeps?
Oh, I think this came out before.
So he may have, this being his first film as a director, decided to mix his actors a little bit more.
Maybe let me double check that, because I might be wrong about that. Let me see here.
Really close.
It's got to be really close, yeah. Night of the Creeps came out. Edit this part out for continuity. Oh, yes. So Night of the Creeps came out the year before this movie.
Wow.
So they probably, he could have done Monster Squad first and then did Night of the Creeps, and Monster Squad may have just had a long post-production period. I don't know. But yeah, it was literally one right after the other.
Oh. And then nothing till RoboCop 3.
Nothing for a long time. I'm sure if I pumped up Decker's IMDb over here, I would probably see a few other things. But yeah, sometimes, granted, like you said, like we've said before, this movie did not make hardly any money.
No.
And must have spent quite a bit on it, because there's a bunch of effects. There's a bunch of great makeup stuff. There's stunts. It's been a gajillion dollars, but they surely spent quite a few. I think the budget had to be, maybe $2 or $3 million. No, it had to be more than that.
Oh yeah, back in the day, maybe 5.
Oh yeah, for sure. And all those explosions, my goodness, there's more dynamite in this movie than a Looney Tunes cartoon. They use it for everything. Even Dracula uses it to blow up their treehouse.
Oh yeah, God. That's right. There's a lot of dynamite in this movie.
Yeah, and then he uses it to blow up the poor black guy in this movie, the partner. "I'm a very good police officer." Boom, dead.
I don't think they get away with it nowadays. You can't just.
Oh, no.
Using dynamite as a PC.
It's so wrong. It's so wrong. But yeah, it's just and also it makes me want, going back to Dracula, how awesome how just like stone cold psychopath he is. But like, he gets thrown by Dracula. He gets thrown by Frankenstein. Phoebe finishes the ritual, and they open up Limbo, and Limbo does his job. Although, if you think about it, though, the kids had pretty much killed all the monsters. Limbo is just there to dispose of their bodies, basically. like they've done Limbo's job. They have restored balance, pretty much. The only thing left is to suck Dracula through the hole. And he's there, and he tries to kill Sean, and Sean gets the chance to stick him through the heart. Which to me, like, the only reason that makes any sense is the fact that Dracula at this point has been like impaled on a cross. So he's not functioning at peak efficiency anymore. But then we get that beautiful little moment where Van Helsing comes back and gives him the thumbs up.
Yeah. As I say, he grabs Dracula, drags him into the portal, gives him the thumbs up.
Yeah, and weirdly, it's like, Limbo's supposed to restore the balance of good and evil and suck the monsters out, but it seems to me like Limbo is just taking like random stuff. Like, why did the truck have to get thrown in there? Was the truck evil? What, or that random police guy, the sheriff, who's just like flailing through the air? Was he like a child molester secretly? Like, what?
You have to bring logic into it. You are absolutely right. Why the heck are they going out into Limbo? Limbo has a purpose, and Limbo just decides it wants to suck everything in, whether it's good or evil.
Or neutral, like poor Frankenstein. And I have to say, like, it still makes me cry when Phoebe says goodbye to Frankenstein and says, "Don't go away," and throws him Scraps, which is her little stuffed dog. And he takes it and says, "Boy."
Interesting. Yeah, interesting way to end the movie. Yeah, it is. It's happy, but yet still downbeat at the same time.
Yeah, that's why they had to have that scene at the end where the army comes in, which is also a setup and payoff. We didn't even talk about the fact that there was a montage in this movie where they're getting ready to go to war. Like, Rudy gets steaks and makes silver bullets. He does most of the work, actually, this movie, now that I think about it. But
he does.
One of the kids whose name I cannot remember, Sean's friend, makes the business cards that say Monster Squad on it. But little Eugene, what does he do? He takes crayon and paper and writes, "Army guys, come, there's monsters," signed Eugene. Which we thought, okay, he's a kid, but we had no idea that this letter actually got to the National Guard, and they actually mobilized and came in the middle of the town square with a tank.
Yeah, it looks cool though.
And it does freaking look cool. That was probably like $500,000 that one day for that freaking tank. And then the general of the National Guard comes in. And he's like, "All right, kid, where are the monsters?
Where are the monsters?"
And he's still got the envelope in his pocket too. I just noticed that. And so like they're like, "You're too late. We got him." "Who are you?" "We're the Monster Squad. Here's our card."
And then the awesome music starts playing over the credits.
Awesome. Yeah, like with lyrics I totally misread for years.
Oh, I did that all the time. I did that all the time.
Oh yeah. I had no idea like there were such great like gems of lyrical poetry in this movie. Like, "From the mouth of babes comes dynamite. The Monster Squad gonna groove tonight."
Oh my god.
We're the Monster Squad.
Oh my god. I don't think I've ever actually paid attention to the lyrics as well, but I do know that when I originally saw the movie, I was one of those kids who actually kept singing the song whether I got the words right or not, the lyrics right or not. I used to sing that song all the time to myself, thinking I was cool. I saw this movie called Monster Squad. Oh my god.
It's so funny. Like I wrote them all down because like literally as the credits were rolling and they came up, I paused it, wrote it all down.
Oh, did you really?
I got them all right here. I mean, I know we don't have time to go through all of it, but some of the highlights include things like first came Dracula, Wolfman 2, The Mummy and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is only on versions that was not on the VHS version. We need wooden stakes. Normal stuff won't stop because they live on hate. Like, never thought of monsters living on hate. That's interesting. It's very philosophical when you think about it.
Someone's got to write these lyrics. Someone's got to record the song.
I know, right? What's funny too about this song is how, like, first of all, I think we both agree that we yearn for the day back in the day when movies had theme songs.
Yeah.
In them. I mean, even stupid movies like this one. I mean, I say that affectionately, of course, but like, you look at the credits. Who's the band that sings the song? They're called the Monster Squad. And you know it's just a bunch of session musicians they paid for the day. This is not a real band.
They did it so they don't have to. The company doesn't have to pay royalties. They own the Monster Squad band. They make anything else, they would have to pay royalties.
Anything else, right? I mean, no. Sometimes you will get things like it's a fake band, but it's actually someone associated with the movie. Like, sometimes like in John Carpenter films, like in Big Trouble in Little China, the Coupe de Villes that sing the song at the end. The Coupe de Villes is not a real band. That's just John Carpenter, and it's just him singing the song. Yeah. Which I didn't know. I was like, "Whoa, that's cool." I didn't know he could sing.
Mm-hmm.
Another fun facts about this movie: filmed in the same studio with Gone with the Wind, Rocky, and Beetlejuice, Culver Studios, California.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Also, another fun thing is like, here we go. Zoom out a little bit. Now I can see all my notes. I could earlier I couldn't remember the name of the actor playing Rudy. His name is Ryan Lambert. He is now an ordained minister, and he officiated the wedding of Frank Stallone.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. I mean, it's IMDb. They must be right.
Yeah, they did their research on this.
Another thing that IMDb says is true is that apparently Liam Neeson was supposed to be in this movie. He was, according to IMDb, he was paid for a small part, but they never ended up using him. So he's not even on the cutting room floor because they never used him.
Interesting. Are these from IMDb?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, this is 1987. This is right around the time when Liam Neeson was starting out in Hollywood. I mean, the Bounty, which was like his first, visible part as man over Mel Gibson's left shoulder.
Next of Kin.
Next of Kin. Yeah.
And Darkman, whenever the hell Darkman came out, because I kind of lose track of when Darkman, Next of Kin. That's who I knew who Liam Neeson was between those two movies.
Oh yeah, Darkman I think was 91 because I remember I was a huge Darkman fan when that came out.
Yeah, I think that was 90s too. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. But Bounty was 84, so he'd been kind of struggling in Hollywood for a little while. So I know exactly what that's like to be like on set and they never use you. Like I was on a Steve Carell movie called Irresistible, and I was supposed to be like I was supposed to be one of the extras in that, and they never end up using me. I got to see Steve Carell in the flesh. That was about it.
Okay. Well,
and apparently, last little factoid that will probably lead us into the next time we meet. Apparently, there is a poster for Lucio Fulci's Zombie in the clubhouse.
No way.
But I do not see it. I'll have to watch it again to see.
I'll have to watch that too, dude. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got. Do you got anything else on this?
No, because you brought up some amazing things about the film. I don't have to speak much. I just reacted to most of everything you had to say. The thing about the conversation is that's exactly what this is. I mean, I'm learning so much more about the film than I knew when I originally saw the film, and I've seen the film I don't know how many times. But now that I think about it, I don't know if I've actually watched it as an adult who's actually watching it to actually look for filmmaking techniques and stuff like that. I need to go back and do that with this film. Because I just never had when I've always watched this film, I've always watched it just to enjoy it because I've enjoyed the hell out of it because I love the damn movie. But to sit back and watch it again with a critical eye will be the next way I watch and enjoy the film. Because this isn't like I watch a film by Christopher Nolan now. I'm watching it as with a critical eye the first time I see it. But when I saw like fucking the Monster Squad, I wasn't watching it like that. I was watching it for its entertainment value. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the first 100 times I've seen the film, I was watching it for its entertainment value. Uh, yeah, so yeah, I will have to go back and watch it with a critical eye now because there's so many different things that you informed me of that I just didn't think about. So,
That's
but
why it certainly does reward repeat viewing.
oh yeah,
It's not one of those things you can watch once and get it all because there's so many layers to the Monster Squad. I mean, we didn't even talk about the brilliant way that Shane Black and Fred Decker subtly sink in the denigration of the family in this movie, like
hmm
how like I mean like like even Spielberg like did E.T. like the divorce, the way they talk about divorce in that is still pretty front and center. This movie, it plays out in the background in so many interesting ways. I mean, even like by the time when Dracula comes to their house, when the dad goes inside the house, there's bags on the floor. Like the mom has packed her bags and she's getting ready to leave them.
I believe that you're correct. I do think I believe that.
Yeah. So like Dracula came at just the right time to inadvertently bring this family back together through the crisis.
Yeah, I think I do remember that actually. Um, I,
Yeah.
I don't remember the actress's name, but she showed up in a lot of movies back then, and I can't.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. She was in. I think Shane Black probably brought her on because she was Martin Riggs' psychiatrist in Lethal Weapon 1 and
There you
2.
go. Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
She
She
was
does show up in there.
oh yeah, she was also the newscaster in Die Hard.
Oh, I just watched that. You're right.
And that's all I can think of at the moment. But yeah, she's one of those character actors that has been just everywhere.
Okay.
This movie is full of them. I can't remember the name of the and I can't. I think the dad, the guy who plays the dad, is the same way too. I can't remember
Yeah,
him.
that's the same way too. But I recognize the mother more so than the dad. I do recognize the dad in other movies I've seen of
I
the
th-
period.
when I first saw the dad, I thought he was Peter Coyote. He's got a Peter Coyote vibe, but he is not Peter Coyote.
He does have a Peter Coyote vibe, actually. Oh God, what the hell happened to Peter Coyote?
He's still alive. I think he's like 80 something now. He's old.
He probably just retired after doing those two horrible Return of the Living Dead sequels.
Which ones? There are many.
Last two, I think 4 and 5, when they shot them back to back. I was like, why are you slumming in this junk?
Was that the one where they went to the rave?
Rave, that's right. There is
Rave.
a rave one. Oh
Yeah,
my God, they were horrible. They were horrible.
bother with them. I saw the first one obviously many times. I saw parts of the second one when it was on Joe Bob Briggs' Monster Vision.
Ah,
Um, and I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much if it wasn't on Joe Bob Briggs' Monster Vision.
easy.
And then years later on Cinemax, I saw 3 late at night on cable, which is probably the best way to watch that movie, actually. And I didn't bother with any other ones.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'll watch all the bad films as well as the good movies. And pretty soon I'll be able to reveal my next little foray into crazy film screenings, which is really watching really bad movies. So,
Yeah.
uh, but I want to thank you, Thomas, for joining us for our conversation in horror. You have enlightened me a lot about the Monster Squad, and I will enjoy rewatching this movie again with a critical eye. And I hope that my audience and anyone else out there who has been listening to us will actually go out there and actually seek out the movie if they've never seen it themselves. It's a highly enjoyable film from director Fred Decker. And any last things to comment on for everybody before we go for this evening?
Just a few quick things. You can watch this movie for free on Paramount Plus if you subscribe to Paramount Plus, because for some stupid reason, this movie, which was filmed in cooperation with HBO, is no longer owned by HBO, but Showtime for reasons. So like if you have Showtime or you're paying for Paramount Plus, you will get this content. Of course, you can also just friggin' buy it on DVD because it's that good. You should do that. And secondly, oh gosh, what was I gonna say? If all of these kind of movie discussion podcasts will rate a movie and create their own like rating system. I don't know if you want to do that, but if you were to decide to do that, I would do a thing where like each movie we we take a thing from the movie and make that our barometer. Like for this movie, I would rate it 4 out of 5 exploding werewolves.
4 out of 5 exploding werewolves. I am going to agree with that. Actually, I will give it 4 out of 5 exploding werewolves, mostly because I'm a huge Mummy fan. I still think that the Mummy is lacking in this film. Other than that, I absolutely love the movie. But the Mummy, next to Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy is my next favorite, and the Mummy doesn't get enough love. Doesn't get enough love.
You know what? And you know what? Real quick, you know what they've never done, or they kind of sort of tried to do it with The Awakening with Charlton Heston and a couple other things. Is like they've never done a movie where it's not necessarily about the mummy coming to life and killing people. It's like they never done about the curse of the mummy. Like they never done a thing where it's like people unearth the mummy and then there's a curse and everyone dies in like Final Destination type ways because of the curse.
Yeah.
Or has like weird nightmares where the mummy attacks them, which is what really happened to people who unearthed like the tomb of Pharaoh Akhenaten because of the curse on his tomb, supposedly. Like no one's ever done that, and that would be so creepy and weird and spooky because there'd be like this aura of like, is this really a curse or is it just a coincidence? Or are you just having crazy nightmares, or is there really an evil that's trying to get you?
I love my Mummy movies. There's some good ones out there, and so yeah. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 exploding werewolves. That's actually a great idea. I might steal that and do that from now on. Thank you so much.
I mean, part of the fun of that is like telling your guests to think of the objects to make. It could be different for each thing. Maybe for zombie it'll be like something like I don't know, punctured eyeballs, because Fulci's all about puncturing eyeballs.
I wish I watched way too often as a kid, but we will say that for another episode, obviously, because I love zombie. Zombie's one of my favorite zombie movies. We'll discuss that later, but I want to thank you again for joining us for this episode, and all the audience. I hope you enjoyed listening to us rant and rave about the movie, and you will hopefully check it out. And don't forget to check out some of our other episodes, and we hope to see you really soon. Good evening. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.